All right, so I wanted to just touch on dictionaries because the book mentions dictionaries and Python uses dictionaries, but we're not going to be really using it in our assignments. We are going to use more the lists or list type of arrays. But I wanted to show you what it was, so that way when you read it, it would you'd have some kind of understanding. So up to now, we've been talking about tuples, and we've said, just as a review, tuples is stuff that's in parentheses. And we might have Homer and Marge and Bart. And the idea behind a tuple is that we couldn't make any changes to it in our code. I guess I need another closing parenthesis there, or quotes there. So it is something we can access using print tuples of, say, 0, for example. So I can get to Homer by printing my variable name and the index number that I'm interested in getting, and I should be printing Homer. But the idea behind a tuple is if I wanted to change it, tuples of 0 is equal to Fred. Maybe I'm going into the Flintstone mode instead. So I'm trying to change this value, and now I'm going to get an error message because tuple does not support item assignment. In other words, once a tuple is made, it cannot be changed. It is similar to a constant. And remember that we see tuples are use parentheses. So then we decided, well, I can, let's just drag out our comments here. So then we also were introduced to lists. And if we took that same, let me just set it up. If we took this same information and we put it into our list, we are creating, in essence, the same idea, but we're using, this time we're using the braces, and the braces indicate that this type of array, this type of Python array is called a list. And if we print lists of 0, that should give us Homer. So it's pretty much the same thing as we did above with the tuples, but it should print out Homer as well, which it does. But the difference is that unlike the tuple, we can make changes to our lists. In other words, if I wanted to list, like we did here, list of 0 is equal to Fred. And now we print out, I'm just going to copy this, print. Now we've actually changed element 0 from Homer to Fred, and we should see that demonstrated here. And you can see that happening. So lists gives us the ability to change, and we use brackets. Tuples, we cannot. So now what are dictionaries then? Well, a dictionary is an idea where we, let's see, instead of getting at elements through index numbers, we can get at it through names. We use what's called a key value pair. In other words, let's just print one out for you. So I'm going to call, let's just go with scores. We've done this one in the past. This time I'm going to use the open and curly braces, and that indicates that now I'm using a dictionary. And as I mentioned, a dictionary, instead of indexes, 0s, 1, 2, is going to use a key value pair. In other words, my key is Homer, and instead of being separated by commas now, I'm going to use a colon and 10. And so what I've done now is I've said, instead of element 0, I'm calling this element, oh, Homer, not home. So now this element is called Homer. Homer is the key, and Homer's value is 10. If I want to continue adding more, I'll put a comma. The key I will use is Marge, and Marge had a score of 25. Then I'll use a comma. Another key value pair would be Bart, quote, and Bart had, what did he have? He had 15. And then Lisa, and she had 50. So the idea here is, again, associated data, but now this is called the key and this is called the value. And so if I were to print out, let's say I wanted to print out Homer's score. In order to get to Homer's score, I would print I would utilize, instead of the index, I would use the key. So the key was Homer. And so now I will print out, this will print out 10. Let's see that work. Oh, what did I do wrong? Oh, I did not use this correctly. That should be a closing bracket. There we go. And now I print out 10. So if I wanted to print Marge, I print out the key in order to get to the value. And I get 25. So now let's, out of curiosity, let's do this. Let's try to loop through all of our dictionary elements and see how we can do that. I'm just going to use the word key. This is a variable name. It can be whatever you want it to be, but I want you to see that I'm looping through the values, and I'm getting, each time I loop through, I get the key, which is what these are in quotes. For key in scores, and let's print out the key. So let's see what value, each time I'm going to, let's comment out this, so I just have this one printing, and let's spell print correctly. Okay, so I'm going to loop through the scores and print out what I'm calling the key. That's just the variable I'm using to indicate that this is what I expect to print out, because that's what I'm looping through. So when we loop through the arrays, instead of using I, which before got us the index value, now we're getting the key. So let's run through that and see that happening. And sure enough, it printed out Homer, Marge, Bart, and Lisa, which are the keys. If I want to print out the values, what I'll have to do is type out the name of the array and the key that I wish to access. And remember, a key is being filled each time I loop through here. So if I put scores of key, it's going to be putting in scores of Homer, scores of Marge, scores of Bart. So now I should actually be seeing the scores along with it. So let's run and see that. And sure enough, that's exactly what's happening. Unfortunately, dictionaries aren't easy to sort. There are ways to do it. It's kind of out of the scope of this particular class. So this is why we're not really going to be utilizing dictionaries. But I wanted to show it to you so that when the book talked about dictionaries, you would have some kind of an understanding of what it's trying to do. We're definitely going to be using, the one we'll be using most of all is the lists, but just wanted you to be familiar with dictionaries when the book talked about it. So those are dictionaries utilizing data with key value pairs separated by semicolons to identify the key versus the value. And then each of those elements are separated by commas within open and curly braces. So that's what a dictionary in Python looks like.